connection initially with the arts and how you came about to be who you are today.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Bivy. I appreciate you inviting me to share a little bit about art and inspiration, and I'm happy to be part of all that you do. I am a full-time professional artist and have been so for almost 20 years. But I wasn't always an artist, and yeah, I might have done some stuff as a kid, but after about the third grade, when a teacher yelled at me, or I kind of put it aside and went into other areas. But I didn't do art like a lot of other artists. They're always been artistic and went to art school and all that. That wasn't the path that I was on. I was on a different path and worked in business and all that. But when I was around 35, I kind of had the, midlife crisis, and I realized that I needed something to do besides work. And that's when I discovered painting. And again, the first painting I did, I was 35, and I still have it. And it looks like something that should be hanging on a refrigerator door, because it left off, it picked up where I left off in the third grade. But
Okay.
it was fun and inspiring and exciting. So I continued to learn and take classes even after work or on the weekends. And then over time, I just got hooked and passionate about it. And then I guess almost 20 years ago, I left my other career to do the art full time. So the message I'd like to give to people is, there's a myth that some people have the artist, talent, and some don't. It's not true. Everyone can learn to paint, draw, create, whatever that expression is. But oftentimes when we're younger, we haven't really been encouraged and nurtured and given the lessons and direction to develop that. And you can develop it at any age.
Skills can be developed.
Mhm.
Now, it's hard if we compare ourselves to a Michelangelo or a Da Vinci. Let's not do that. Let's just, try to use the arts as a way of expression. So you guys can see behind Pat one of her beautiful pieces. Two of her beautiful pieces. She's an amazing artist, and I think that is so awesome to see that the beginning was a very basic beginning, and look at all the skills and all the hard work that you have put into developing the techniques, because I think you have gone through different techniques throughout this process, trying to understand where is that place that you feel more comfortable.
Art to me is really something that you create for the sheer joy of creating. If you think about art, there is a definition. It's like art really has no function. I mean, there are functional arts you can participate in, like making ceramics and things like that. But to paint, it's just really for the sheer creation of beauty. And to me, beauty is essential for life. It's not a luxury that you eventually get to when you have some time. It's important for our healing, for our well-being. Art and beauty lifts us up above the everyday challenges that we have to kind of be connected to something bigger than ourselves. So for me, art is all about beauty. Other people may have art coming from different directions, but for me, it's about creating something beautiful to uplift others. Creativity, there's a lot. There's the inspiration of, like, what do you want to paint and why? And that's a very personal thing of, like, kind of what grabs you, or what you look at and may gasp and say, oh my God, I love that color, or I love those beautiful flowers, or I love that scenery with that lake. Something that, like, ignites a little spark in you to say, stop and take a look and say, oh, I'd love to paint that. But also creativity is in the problem solving. I teach art, and I always tell my students, half of creativity is creative problem solving, because you'll be in the midst of painting and think you're going one place, and then you run into something like you didn't anticipate. So now how am I going to deal with that? So that's a lot of it too, is sort of you're in the process walking through it, and it's not a linear 1, 2, 3 step process. It is creative, organic, and you're in the dance with your medium, with whether it's paint or jewelry or whatever you're making, you're in a dance with the materials and with your vision and with your subject and all of that. And I think that's where you're coming up with creative solutions to get to your vision of what you intended to create in the first place.
Feel this way, but I feel like I do try to have a script, if you will, when I develop my ideas and how I'm going to try to turn this idea into a piece of art, whatever technique I'm going to use. But in the middle of creating that piece, there's going to be some accidental ideas that come about to solve problems in my technique, but maybe in the subject that I'm developing. And there are some points that I keep track really strongly because of the technique that I want to show. Yes. But will you say that a lot of the growth that you have had is like encouraged by accidents or what ifs at the studio, or are many based on, no, I want it this way?
I think part of your growth as an artist is wondering. Like, you have to be able to wonder. Like, I wonder what would happen if I did a dark background here. I wonder what would happen if I lit this from behind. I wonder what would happen if I put this in a dark vase instead of this light vase, or, you know, whatever. There's got to be like a curiosity and an openness to, like, I wonder what. And, you know, you might try something and it doesn't work, and you know what, scrap it and try something else. But you have to have that curiosity and unattachment, because the minute you're attached to it's got to turn out a particular way, that tension, I think, shows up on the canvas. The days that I'm free and open and at play, kind of, you know, things just sort of channel through and it flows and it's easy. Once I start getting into the mindset of it's got to be right, it's got to be perfect, I'm tense, somebody else has got to like this, you know, that kind of tension. I think your energy, your personal energy, shows up on the canvas or whatever medium you're working with. So I always tried to start out being in a good energy, like, this is just for fun, this is for joy, just create. And then if you don't like it, you can scrape it down, toss it out or whatever, and start anew. But if you're too uptight, I've got to get it right, that's when it really hampers your creativity. In fact, I'll tell you, I have a little sign on my easel that says, "Don't let perfection suck the life out of a painting." Because, and I'm very sensitive to noting that now. I didn't used to be, but I notice when I get towards the end of the painting and I want to make sure this is straight, or, you know, something, and I start getting into more details and more got to get it right attitude, my energy changes and becomes more tense. And so now I'm like tuned into that. When I notice that, I step away, go take a break, go get something to drink, go do something else for a half hour, or come back tomorrow. But you need to make sure that you're in a space to create. Like, there's no attachment. It doesn't matter how it turns out. The point is enjoying the process. And there's a great quote from Robert Henry, who was one of the famous ash can painters. And he said, you know, the point is not to create a painting, it's to be in that wonderful state that makes art inevitable. So it's all about who you're being and feeling good, and letting that energy go into your artwork. What do you want this painting to feel like at the end? You know, the saying, begin with the end in mind. I'm doing a painting right now that I started today, which is a commission for someone. And he's a past client of mine. I'm making a painting for his wife for their anniversary. And it's a scene from where they went on their honeymoon. So already, you know, there's a space of love and joy there, you know, because he's so excited to have something special for her. And so there's definitely the space of love. But for me also, the scene is a beautiful building that had an abundance of orange and violet and green flowers and leaves, and there was a lot of beautiful foliage, and it was just so abundant that it feels joyful. So that's kind of where I start with, like, at the end of this painting needs to feel joyful. And for me personally, the painting needs to feel alive. I don't want it to feel static. I wanted to have that energy into it, that someone's looking at it, your eye moves through it, it's engaging, you want to stay and look at it more. So those are the places that I start out with, as from a spiritual, emotional standpoint. And then there's the technical of, the drawing, and how much drawing do I want, and what am I going to include, what am I not going to include. You don't, if you're painting from a photo, you don't have to include everything. If you're painting a landscape outside, you don't have to include everything. That's part of your choice as an artist. So that's, the drawing, the composition, the color schemes, like what colors do I want to do? Like the painting I mentioned this morning is a lot of orange and violet and green. I want to concentrate on those colors as much as possible to have the painting be harmonious. So there's the emotional part of it, and then there's the technical part of it. And both of those have to come together as you get started.
What comes first to your mind when you have a new idea?
I do paint landscapes, but lately I've been painting a lot of floral and still life. So you start with an idea, maybe you start with a beautiful piece of ceramics. And then, it's hard to separate those things, because then I'll look at what other things would go well with that from a color standpoint, a shape standpoint. Maybe I've got a beautiful cobalt blue vase. Well, these white flowers or yellow flowers would look beautiful with that. What else can I bring in? Then it starts getting into color. What else can I bring in a similar color to start moving your eye around the painting? So, I say subject, but you can't really tease apart the subject and the color, because that's all part of the design. And, the flowers per se, they're flowers, but they're also just props. They're symbols of shapes and colors and textures that are going to help move your eye around the painting. So, it's hard to say, but I do pay attention sort of to my heart and my response. Like if I see these beautiful peonies and go, that's a little trigger to me, like, oh, I'd love to paint that. And there are other things that I see that, I could paint, but I'm not that interested. I actually told one of my teachers I wasn't painting any more barns, because I was in a class and we were always painting barns. And I grew up in New York City, and I have no emotional connection to barns. I could paint a barn, do a good job on it, but it's not engaging for me. So I stick to the things that I fall in love with. So I think
Absolutely.
the artist's job is to, highlight things that move them. And if it moves you, guess what? There's a lot of other people that are going to connect with it. Not everybody, and your job is not to please everybody, but there's enough other people that will resonate with that to make that emotional connection.
And a special moment in your life, and how it was transferring to one of your pieces.
Well, it's interesting. I just finished something like that. And for Mother's Day, my stepdaughter gave me these beautiful, very unique kind of lavender roses. And it was meaningful to me because, she's my stepdaughter, not my own daughter. And she always remembers me and includes me in all that she's doing, just, like her real mother. So it really touched me. And so I took those flowers and I created a painting of them. One of my clients actually bought a picture frame for me, and it was an unusual size. So I used that frame, and I designed the rose painting to fit right in that frame. And I just hung it up the other day in my own home. So that's not one that I'm not going to sell. That's one that is meaningful to me, because every time I see it, I remember the occasion that I got that for. And I do that a lot in other paintings that I do as commissions, like for gifts for people. Like I love to paint the bridal bouquets. That's something that's so meaningful and personal for someone. And a lot of times, like the mother or the bride or the husband will contact me and send me the photos, and I'll paint that bouquet so that they have like a living memory of that in their house. Like when you don't see things, they kind of go out of existence. But when you see it every day, it's a reminder that, you know, brings you back to that day. And one of the brides that has a bouquet painting I did, she has it over her nightstand. And she says, you know what, every day when I go to bed, I think of my wedding day. And every day when I wake up, the first thing I see is that bouquet. That's bringing meaning to art at another whole level, because it is personal. And you know, I think it's, you know, more than just decorative, but it relates to an important day of your life. So I love to do paintings that are meaningful for the people who are going to receive them. You know, just generally for art, like, you know, if you're going to learn a language, like you're going to learn Spanish or French, there's adjectives, verbs, nouns, all that. Art is a language, but it's a visual language. So the parts of speech are not nouns and verbs, but they're shape, color, value, meaning light and dark, and edges. Those are the big four that I focus on when I'm creating a painting. Those are the tools that we have in our toolkit to express something through art, all of those things. And it can be challenging because you're juggling a lot of balls. Like every stroke that you're putting down is a decision about shape, color, value, edges, and all of that, as well as the drawing and the composition. Well, as far as unique to me, I think artists have a color tendencies, color preferences that they lean towards. I lean towards more vivid colors, which is part of why I like flowers as a subject, because they are the most vivid things in nature. You know, the landscape, trees in the distance and all are kind of grayed down a bit more, but flowers give you the opportunity to paint vivid, bold colors. And I think your brushwork is very personal too. It's like your handwriting. You can't really force it. It will develop on its own. But which brushes you choose, how you use that brush, how much paint you put on the brush, those are all very personal, like habits and preferences kind of that you get into, that over time you start seeing that as a style, or you know, people can tell that's your painting because there are cues. It's hard to articulate that, but it's something that develops, and it's something that, you know, new artists should not worry about. I've had a lot of students that are like, well, how am I going to develop my style? Don't worry about it. You didn't
That
worry
will
about
come with time.
writing. It will naturally come out. Even when I look at students in my class that are all painting the same subject, say for the class, there'll be 10 students and there'll be 10 very different paintings, because someone likes a little closer in view, someone uses brighter color, someone paints bigger, you know, all those things. Over time, you keep making choices of the things that resonate with you, and whatever that is fine. You know, the good thing about art is, like, there's nothing wrong.
There's no wrong.
It's a creation. You may prefer some to others, but it's all part of your expression and your learning process. I think every painting that you're doing is a lesson for the next painting. And even after 25 years of painting, believe me, I am still learning. And I have a plaque in my studio. It says, I am still learning. And that was from Michelangelo when he was 87. So I think if he was still learning at 87,
if he was still learning,
no wonder I'm still learning. And there was another famous artist that was in his 90s, and someone's like, why do you keep you know, painting? He's like, I think I'm finally getting the hang of it. So anyway, so, you know, everyone you mentioned earlier, Michelangelo, Picasso, all these people, we see their work after 20, 40, 50, 80 years. We don't see their work when they first started.
in the beginning. Yes.
Everyone starts as a beginner. No one starts as a master. There's nothing to really be afraid of. You know, like I've heard students say, well, I'm afraid to put this down. What's there to be afraid of? It's a piece of paper. You know, there's no fear. The fear is in your head. Let that go. Fear is the thing that keeps us from learning, because we start listening to the voices in our head instead of just the experience of putting down the paint and seeing what happens. So if you can, that voice will be there judging and all. That's because we're human beings and that comes up. But when you hear that, let it go and say, you know what, that's not helpful here. If I want to be open to learning, I can't listen to the voice in my head. I have to be engaged in what I'm doing, fully present. Yeah, and I'll actually show you.
Okay.
So I have these little small, these are like 6x8 canvases. So sometimes if I want to brainstorm, rather than, write down ideas, I might, over the course of a few days, do 5 or 6 of these. And then they're sort of my dress rehearsal, just try out something and see if I like that idea. And then the best of those, I can scale up to a larger painting. So, if you ever feel like you're in a rut, usually your first idea off the top of your head is kind of the boring, predictable one. But if you keep pushing and try it again and try it again, you may come up with something a little unexpected and more unique and more exciting. Even also in a sketchbook, if I'm looking at something, I may do little thumbnail sketches. And again, the first one is kind of the predictable one of what's literally in front of you there. But then if you say, well, again, back to I wonder if I did that in a square format. I wonder if I did it in a vertical format. I wonder if I zoomed in. I wonder if I made panoramic. I wonder if I just focused on this and eliminated that. There's endless I wonder, and so if you're in that mind frame of I wonder and work small, you can generate a lot, like at a brainstorming session, but you can do that for yourself. And then step away from that, come back another day, and then you can look at it with your judgment and say, okay, this one I think is the strongest. I'm going to pursue that bigger. So those would be my suggestions. Just play and do a lot and do them small, so you don't have a lot of time and emotion invested in them, but you're just generating possibilities for a larger work.